bio mentioned I've been certified diver since 1989. I actually took scuba diving for PE credit in college. I didn't want to do it, but my girlfriend at the time really wanted to do it, so I did it. And here I am. So, anyways, I joined TOPS, the Underwater Photography Club, in '97 because I decided I needed to do something to try to improve my photography. So that sounded like a good idea, and it worked out pretty well for me. I was more interested in underwater photography before I was interested in topside photography. That's what underwater photographers call photography, not underwater, because you can't call it land photography because sometimes it's not really land photography. So it's topside photography. We have 3 kids. They all are certified divers. They're all in college now. So this is the first trip that they were all 3 certified. My daughter in the middle there was 10 and a half at the time.
Oh.
I guess we became retired, and last May or so, we bought a house in Colorado. So now we spend half our time in the Houston area and half our time. So I get to take a lot of pictures in Colorado also, and wildlife and scenery and all that kind of stuff. The fox is on my back deck, actually, a fox. I don't feed it, but obviously someone in the neighborhood's been feeding it because it was very friendly. We see it almost every evening about 5:15, 5:30. We call it Fox 30. So we always look around for the fox because it's usually wandering around the house.
Where?
Augusta Springs, Southwest Colorado, about an hour from Durango.
Ah.
And I do a lot of photography in Texas. You know, I don't only do wildlife stuff, but you know, I do quite a bit of that. I've been fortunate enough to travel to rainforest and like Borneo, Australia, Costa Rica. So I do a lot of photography, those kind of places. I'm just going to flip through a lot of these. Night feeding nectar bats. You know, pretty cool thing to see. I've been more temperate places like New Zealand and Iceland. Of course, Desert Southwest is a great place. Galapagos. Our 2 daughters are both adopted from China. So I've over the years spent several months in China. A lot of very rich photographic opportunities in China. So I'm trying to say I've done a lot of things, and I'm very fortunate to photograph a lot of different things. Topside is nice, but nothing compares to underwater, okay, my opinion. There's nothing like the life on a healthy Indo-Pacific coral reef. So much action and activity, so many different colors and textures. Really, it can't be compared to anything else I've experienced on land. You know, you can go to a really busy, thriving Southeast Asian market, a lot of colors and textures. You can go to the rainforest, and to me, they're just no competition. So why I love photographing underwater. The diversity of life, color, and texture is really here. Diving on a reef is for someone that's never been a scuba diver. I try to explain it like being able to go to a really active, healthy rainforest and be able to float around at all different levels and move in and the creatures close up. You know, most of the fish and underwater critters are really not too afraid of divers. I mean, yeah, they'll move away, but not like most land critters are. You're able to get much closer. So this is my wife. This is in Indonesia. You know, this is about 3,000 foot drop off straight down wall. And, you know, you're swimming along. If you want to go up a little bit, go down a little bit, whatever. And, you know, a lot of, like I said, the turtle, you know, this was a fisheye lens. And so I'm probably like that far from the turtle shooting that. And so that's just kind of how it is. My dive. Not on mute.
Somebody may have gone in and.
Now I think they just muted.
Yeah.
And this is like one of my dive buddies looking at it for me.
No, I'll go down.
Okay, do you want 2 pieces of meatloaf or 1?
How big are they?
I'll do 1 and hit you another one.
Yeah.
We'll take it. We all get about 20 more meatloaves.
While he's fixing, we rented a ride in a submarine one time.
Okay, yeah.
Everything was green. You couldn't see color.
We're gonna talk all about that, trust me.
Oh, okay. All right.
So how many of y'all scuba dive or have been scuba divers? Okay, good. So that can't make it too many crazy stories. Y'all catch me. So if no one raises their hand, I go, oh, I can say all kind of crazy stuff. No one will know.
I'll let you go again here.
You could use, I couldn't see, everybody that's up here is muted, so I don't really
I'm
understand.
not sure where that was coming.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not only about coral reefs underwater. You know, there's a lot of like shipwrecks, some historic shipwrecks, and some just man-made artificial reefs. But if you're interested in that, that's another option to explore, and cave diving and cenote diving and stuff like that. That's my wife down in Yucatan there in a cenote. And just to show you, you never know what you're going to have going on during a dive. This is not a good picture. This is my dive buddy here. You see his camera, and he's wearing a pink little hood. He always wear crazy color stuff like that. But he's photographing probably a little angelfish or something, and right behind him swam a shark and a turtle. And I was quite a ways away. I had a macro lens on, so I had to be really far away. So I took the picture just so I could show him later because I thought it was hilarious. That he's not even paying attention, and that's what's going on right behind him. So I talked about all the different colors and textures. Like I said, keep you busy forever photographing. Anywhere you look on the reef, you know, there's interesting colors. Literally every color of the rainbow and patterns. This is just a close-up of a fanning coral. On the left is a face profile shot of it's called a frogfish. So that's the eye and that's the mouth. They're very well camouflaged, like a rock. And this on the right is a tunicate or a sea squirt. So they suck water in and filter the particles out and then they expel the water out. But, you know, just the colors, patterns. This is a squid. So next time you're eating calamari, that's what you're eating, unfortunately. And all these little dots on it are the chromatophores, the color cells that can change the color and patterns of the squid. So very interesting stuff. And you can also see the little suckers on his arms there.
What depth do you usually dive?
I'm not a real fan of going super deep. You know, recreational limits when I got certified were 130 feet. And now they kind of say it's 100. But most of the time I'm diving, it's probably like 50, 60 feet. It's pretty average. Sometimes shallower, sometimes a bit deeper, but that's pretty average. So this is a crinoid. I should have put a photo of the whole crinoid, but it kind of looks like a fern if you saw it, but it's actually an animal. And the left photo there is the arms of the crinoid, just showing the detail. And then the right is the center, basically the mouth. So it brings particles in, it can get them and bring the particles to its mouth. So the diversity of subjects is very broad. Ugly, this is a devil scorpion fish, it's called. This is a hairy frogfish. You see its mouth and the two eyes. And the thing on its forehead, there's a little fishing pole, basically this, oh shoot. This thing right here, you can see that line, that's like a fishing pole, and this is like, it looks like a worm, and it'll wiggle that thing when it's fishing. And a little fish will come in and check it out, and it'll suck them in. This is a stargazer, so they live in the sand. They're always just, it's hard to explain the fish, but it's flat like this. Its mouth and eyes are straight on top of its head, basically. And it's always buried in the sand, just looking up, waiting for something to come a little too close, suck it in. And then you got pretty things. Zirconia on a little azure-based sponge, it's called. Queen angelfish. A pair of nudibranchs, and nudibranchs are basically slugs, but they're not like the brown slugs you see in your backyard. I mean, they come in every color, many different patterns, many different body shapes. But there are a lot of people out there that are like bird watchers, but they're slug watchers. Or they are diving in pursuit of nudibranchs to check them off their list. It's a popular thing. There's big stuff. This is a whale shark, and it's hard to see, but there's a diver right there. See a little stream of bubbles coming up. Manta ray again. These are hammerheads and Galapagos, like 10-foot hammerheads. And you got a lot of little stuff. This is probably about an inch long goby on a bubble coral. What that thing is. This is a pygmy seahorse, and not with the tail straightened out, but as it is right there, it's probably about a ½ inch long. They were actually only discovered in 1969 because they blend in so well with the fans. I think there are now maybe 7 species, and they each live on a certain type of soft coral. And so they're all perfectly adapted to match and blend into that soft coral. This little filefish is about the size of a dime, and you can actually see the grains of sand here on the algae, so you can get an idea how big it is. And this is probably the size of a blueberry. This is crab Megalupa. It's a larva crab, basically. It's floating around, platonic. It hasn't settled to the bottom yet. This is on a blackwater dive, it's called, where you go out to really deep water and they put lights down on a rope tied to a buoy, and you dive over like 1,000-foot water, but you're only going down about 50 or 75 feet. So all the stray creatures migrate up at night to the surface to feed, and you see all kind of crazy stuff. There's scary stuff. Moray eels are not really scary, but they look scary. Sharks, again, not too scary. Unless it's like a great white or a big tiger shark, maybe I'll be a little afraid. But most sharks is not scary underwater. This is the bobbit worm, and it was classified about the time that Lorena bobbit was famous. You remember that? And that's where it got its name. So, and they can be up to 10 feet long. They live in a hole in the sand, and they usually just stick their head out, and they're waiting for something to come by. And they have little appendages there that can sense movement. And little fish comes by, they'll jump up and grab them. But they're kind of creepy looking. Funny stuff. This is kind of cute puffer fish. They always have the most amazing eyes. I don't know how the TV's showing it. They're like glitter in their eyes. They're really awesome to see. This guy just kind of looks funny to me. I don't know. It's a wrasse. Then my dive buddy with his hair going up from the bubbles. Okay, let's see if we can do this.
I brought you something close to me, and left with something new. See through your hair, you haunt my dreams. There's nothing to do but believe. Just believe. Just breathe. Another day. Just believe. Another day. Just breathe. Another day. Just believe. Another day. Just breathe. I'm used to it by now. Just breathe. I
Any particular questions on the slideshow first before we go on? Yes, sir.
Question, all the bright, pretty colors you see on fish. Now, when you take them out of the water, do they lose those colors?
Well, when they start to die, they do.
I mean,
I mean, they're really that color. If you bring them up to natural light.
never
yes.
see that color.
Yeah. But when you're at 80 feet, you're not going to see all those vibrant reds and things like that because we're going to talk about it in a minute because the sunlight is all filtered out. So everything that say 80 feet is pretty much just bluish tones.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that.
And
Okay.
very few of those were taken off gallons.
No. Zero. Zero. So what does it take to make pictures like that underwater? You need a camera, either a DSLR or a mirrorless camera or a compact digital camera, and you need a watertight housing for it. This is a example of a housing. So this is the housing. This is my old one. I had it was already put together, just sitting in the closet, so I just grabbed it. I didn't have to put anything together. This is actually for a Nikon D200. And so what happens is all these little buttons and stuff on the outside of the housing reach in and push the buttons on the camera. Okay. And that's how that works. There are not housings made for every camera. So if you ever think you want to get into underwater photography, don't just go buy a camera and think you're going to go buy a housing. You got to make sure there's a housing for that camera. And a lot of the common cameras, there are housings made for them. And then depending on what lens you're using, the ports are interchangeable. I don't want to take it off, but so this is the port here. And that's for a macro lens. If you're shooting a wide angle lens or fisheye lens, it'll look more like a bubble. It's called a dome port. And so sometimes you'll have to change those out depending on what lens you're using.
You don't change those underwater.
Correct. Correct. There are called wet lenses. We'll talk about a little bit too that you can do underwater. And then you also have to have strobes, which what we call flashes. I don't know why they call them that. So these are two CNC strobes, and this is just for carrying it. So it would normally be more like this on diving. But I just use a clip to make it easier to manage because they get wily. The strobe arms hold the things underwater well, but on land, they're not that strong to hold them. They're not getting some buoyancy from the water. And then also you would use cords to connect the strobes to the cameras. Most people today are using fiber optic cables because you can use a little flash or a flash on the camera. And then a fiber optic will just carry that signal to the flashes. And it's much easier than electronic connection that has to be watertight and stuff because you can pop off the fiber optic underwater if you needed to.
Do you connect it to your suit at all, or is it all just free?
I wear a wrist lanyard usually. So if something's going on, I have to drop it. I can, and help somebody or whatever. Some people do have them on a coiled cord, basically, so they can drop it and it will go 4 or 5 feet away from them if they had to deal with an emergency or something like that, or just in case they drop it and it's 2,000 feet deep or whatever. So, first things first, I always have this disclaimer slide. You really need to be a safe, confident diver before deciding to take up underwater photography. Shooting photos underwater or video underwater is a big distraction. Many divers have run out of air at 80 feet because that's such a cute seahorse, including my wife. She ran out of air at 55 feet. Me and our other buddies were already up on the boat, and we're like, she was down there a long time. She was with the dive master, and we're like, she's got to be really low on air because we were up for 10 minutes or something. And then she comes up, fairly close to the boat, and I can hear her say to the dive master, "My husband's going to kill me." I'm like, what? She was taking pictures of a seahorse, and also she turns to the dive master and he goes, "You're out of air?" All about, and she was like, "Yeah." So he gave her, the spare regulator, and they came up to the surface. So anyway, that can happen to anybody if you're not careful. That's why it's really important to be a super diver first. And really to get good pictures or video underwater, you got to have really good buoyancy control. So scuba divers wear a vest that can inflate and deflate with air to help your buoyancy. And so you should be able to maintain buoyancy at any depth. And so that's a big trick in getting good photos, because if you're moving back and forth because you're not buoyant, you're trying to kick or flap your arm or something, you're not going to get good pictures. And also I suggest if you're starting out, start out with something small and simple, not some big monster camera. So snorkeling versus diving, kind of I talked about snorkeling. Yeah, you can take pictures while snorkeling. Scuba sure makes it easier. Because when you're snorkeling, you only have a limited amount of time on that one breath. To go down, compose, maybe make adjustments and take the photo. There are serious free divers. There are accomplished underwater photographers. That's a whole nother game. They're holding their breath for 3 or 4 minutes and stuff like that. The other problem with snorkeling and taking photos is snorkelers tend to swim down, see a fish sitting there, and they take a picture just like that, shooting down on it. So that's not a really good way to get nice photos. So situations when snorkeling or free diving is preferred. The zoomers are still there somewhere, right?
Yeah.
You didn't minimize them. I just want to make sure. Very, very shallow water, you would get a phone call. Some animal interactions like manatees, usually not allowed to do scuba with manatees in Florida, snorkeling only. The humpback whales, places you can do trips with humpback whales. There are places you can dive with them, but most of the time it's more free diving, snorkeling type stuff. And then a lot of the places where you would go, like the Bahamas, you go on special trips to go out on the Bahama Bank to chase the dolphins and they come play with you, but not when you're on scuba, it's all free diving. And also over under images where you have the frame half in, half out of the water. A lot of times, you can do that on a snorkel or even standing or kneeling in shallow water. I rarely snorkel just because I don't have to, but I do sometimes when need be. But so I don't have many photos snorkeling, but this is like on an Alcamal on family vacation. And also Alcamal. So my son now is a junior at Texas A&M, so this is quite an old photo. But this is like an over-under shot, and this is textbook for a easy over-under shot because white sand, so it reflects a lot of the light for the underwater portion of it, and so that makes it a lot easier to balance the above and below exposures. So underwater, yes.
Do you take 2 shots?
No,
and
that's one
expose
shot.
For,
That's one shot.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
you could do that. Yeah, you could merge them together, top and the bottom, but those are one shot. So underwater camera options, GoPro. A lot of people start out with GoPros. I don't have the GoPro in the housing. The GoPro that comes, I think, waterproof to 30 feet or something like that. So you buy a little accessory housing like that. And
The new ones, you don't even need that. If you go.
to go
back-
past 30 feet.
Yeah,
Yeah, so if you're going deeper, you need the housing. In my opinion, they're much better for video than they are for still photos because they won't sync with the flash. You can use hot lights, full lights to try to brighten things up down there. But that's the main limitation of the GoPro is taking stills, is that you cannot sync it with the flash. Then you also have your house compact cameras. So very, very popular one. If anybody was going to start out trying to take pictures underwater, TG6, the Olympus TG6, it's that tough series. They're waterproof, I think, to 30 feet by themselves. And then you put them in an accessory housing and they do great. They have microscope mode, it's called, for macro stuff, and it does awesome underwater. And then above that, you get into the house DSLR or mirrorless cameras. So I haven't updated this in several years. So this is a GoPro 7. They're now on a GoPro 11, but the prices haven't changed too much. But this just shows you an idea of how much they are. The $399 is on the black. You can't see it. So like $400 for the camera, $50 for the dive housing that you take it, the 100 feet plus. And then I'm a big fan of the filters, the flip filters made by a company called Backscatter, and they allow you to do some color correction. So you're not using lights, or even if you are, I guess I can stand over here. So the flip filters, if you get below, say 20 feet, you could put the filter on and it will try to introduce some of the reds back into the video that you're shooting, okay? And it really does improve the quality. Instead of getting all that this blue stuff, it makes it a lot better looking. And then, I have lights. I have never shot my GoPro like that. Normally I have these lights mounted on these arms, like halfway up. And then I have the GoPro mounted on the cold shoe here. So I bring it with me. So I'm shooting macro and a manta ray comes swimming by. I got it covered too, because I could use the GoPro for that. And a lot of photographers do that. They have a GoPro mounted on their regular housing. I have that little tray and stuff just in case one day my camera dies or whatever. Or for my kids, if they want to take the GoPro on a diving.
Now, do you take a movie or shots,
Videos
video?
on the GoPro, yeah. And hopefully at the end we'll have a few minutes, I have like a 3-minute little video. No, it's actually, I think I gave you the 45-second one. So it's only 45 seconds of GoPro footage with the GoPro and the lights. So this is the Olympic, now they're on TG6. And this is a little Olympus housing, but it's relatively inexpensive. Then you can go up from there and get a strobe or video lights for it. And you were talking about changing ports underwater. So there are what they call wet ports or wet lenses. So that housing on the right there, you can put accessory dome port on it that increases the angle of view. Okay. And it's important to have really wide angle of view if you're trying to take pictures of a reef scene or something big so you can get close. Because the more water you shoot through, the crappier the picture is going to look. So you really want to have lens that will help you get super close to your subjects. And that's what those big accessory dome port will do. And this is a picture of my buddy's mirrorless camera. He mainly shoots video. Those big fat things on the strobe arms or floats to help make the system neutrally buoyant. And I usually have floats that I put on these arms, but they're kind of a pain to put on and off, and I store them with them off. So I didn't want to put them on. But otherwise, it's really heavy underwater, and it's
What are those legs on that?
it's a tripod. Yeah, so he can shoot video. You know, the important thing about the video, you want to hold it still. So if you're shooting some small subjects in the sand or something, you can just put the little tripod legs down to stabilize it. So this is like a picture of my system, and that shows my focus light on there. And the focus light just puts out a nice soft diffuse light. So if you're shooting in lower light levels or under a ledge or something, and your camera's having a hard time focusing, that focus light really helps a lot. And that shows the fiber optic sync cords. And that's a different housing than this one, because this is my old one. So this is size comparison. The one on the right is a full frame DSLR, like a D850 or something. In the middle, you got like an Olympus Micro Four Thirds mirrorless camera. And then on the far left, you got like a Olympus TG6 or something. So there's a big difference in size, cost, weight, complexity, all those things going from the right to the left. So this is a close-up photo showing the controls inside of the housing, and how when you push the buttons or turn the knobs on the housing, they reach in and actuate those buttons on the camera. And they're really a feat of engineering, I will tell you, because they cram a lot of stuff in those little housings. O-rings. If you're doing anything in the water with flashlights even, or cameras or GoPro, O-rings are little pieces of rubber that hopefully help keep the water out. You need to,
Okay.
people don't know this. Like, a lot of times they have no clue, but you really need to make sure they're clean. You don't want any sand on them. You don't want hairs on them, because that's how water will get into your camera. And also the little surface that the O-ring sits in and the mating surface on the other side of the lid all need to be clean. Okay, so if you're dealing with a GoPro, you're going to take it in the water, make sure that it's all clean, and usually use some kind of little silicone grease on it to make it. It's not to seal it. Silicone grease is just to lubricate the O-ring so it actually doesn't bind up or twist or something like that. And this just shows close up of the silicone grease and the O-rings for my camera system. So I'm using a D7200 for underwater. That is probably circa 2016. I have a D500 and a Nikon Z7 II for land stuff, but I haven't put them in housings. And so I'm still using that one from 2016. And it works fine for me. I have for underwater, I use a 10.5 millimeter fisheye or a 10-17 fisheye zoom lens. And then for macro, I use a 60 millimeter or a 105 millimeter macro lenses. CNC is the brand of housing I use. And then I have a mini dome port, which is a small bubble for my 10-17 fisheye. And then I also have an 8-inch fisheye dome, which is a bigger dome for like over under shots and stuff like that. That's the main reason I use that today. 2 strobes. I use focus light, and then the video lights on that thing are called Big Blue. That's the brand. And they're 15,000 lumen lights. That's a lot. I mean, we turn the lights off, we would light this room up like day. So they're really bright. So if you have more information or you want more information on photography gear, our club has a lot of information. We have a YouTube channel. It's hups.org. So it's like the website, but it's spelled out hups.org. And we put our meetings on there and we have some workshops on there and things like that. Wet Pixel is a very informative underwater photography and videography website. They have forums, so you can go on there and read all the posts about different cameras or different techniques or travel destinations. And then backscatter.com is a camera shop I use a lot. Every year they come out with a compact camera for underwater comparison. And so it's very, very informative. They do a lot of testing and they kind of, name their favorite compact camera for underwater for the year. And if I can ever answer any questions, I'm happy to. So some challenges of underwater photography: risk of serious injury or death. That's number one. That's pretty serious. Everything is moving underwater. Of course, the fish are swimming around, but you're also usually floating somewhere, right? And so that becomes quite challenging to be stable and still to try to focus and compose a shot. Sometimes, if it's sand, you can be touching the sand, or I'll put a finger down on a piece of algae or something like that, not on coral. But a lot of times you're taking photos just floating in the water. Water and cameras do not mix. You got to be real careful about keeping the water out. The water absorbs light and color the deeper you go. Okay. And then even clear water, you can think it's really clear, but when you shoot through 10 or 20 feet of that water, there's a lot of junk in it. So we're going to talk to a little section here about common image problems, or as I like to call it, why most underwater photos suck. So some common image issues are lack of sharpness, incorrect exposure, or poor lighting, and then poor composition. So what's that?
It sounds like topside.
Yeah, a lot of it's same. And we're going to talk about how it compares. So sharpness, if the image isn't sharp, it's a killer. I looked at that and I'm like, well, now they have all these programs that'll help you sharpen things. So it's still, to me, I don't like doing much Photoshop work. I don't use Lightroom. I don't use Photoshop. So you really want to get it sharp, okay? And a critical portion of the image that needs to be sharp. And normally if it's a subject with eyeballs, it's the eyes, okay? That was usually what you really want sharpest. Sharpness can suffer from, focus issues, shutter speed issues, to slow shutter speed, or, which is very common, is shooting through too much water. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. It's very common for new photographers that are swimming down the reef, like, oh, a starfish, and they'll just stay right where they spotted it and start shooting. It's like, no, you get close, you can actually get a good picture. So it's important to always try to strive to get close. So something we have underwater that I can't say you never have on land, because I have had backscatter in dusty environments and stuff, or with a lot of bugs. Backscatter is when your flash illuminates all the little particles in the water, and then they reflect back to the camera. Okay, especially bad if white sand gets stirred up. It's very reflective. And so you get a lot of stuff like this. And I'm not terribly far away from this fish. It's just there must have been a lot of sediment in the water. And probably my strobes weren't aimed properly. So that's what we're talking about real quickly here. So if your strobes are aimed too far in, these lines indicate the beam of light from the strobe. You're illuminating all these particles between the camera and the subject, which is that starfish. Okay. And so that's a problem for backscatter. So if you aim your strobes properly, you can help minimize the amount of particles you're illuminating, okay, and get a lot cleaner shot. But even better is getting closer. So now there's hardly, much fewer particles between the lens and the subject, okay? So a lot of times people complain about backscatter, like, well, you need to get closer to your subject, and you will try to minimize that backscatter.
Is there any sort of adjustment of it itself?
Some of them do have, some of them do have things like that. And I'm gonna talk about one of my favorite toys in a little bit, a snoot. But yeah, some of them do have things, and some people make homemade things to try to minimize, like put an old wetsuit, cut the sleeve off and put it over your strobe. So now it's, very narrow beam. So you always want to get close. And also, like I mentioned earlier, you want to use lenses that allow you to get close. So dedicated macro lenses that have very close focus ability, or fisheye lens. Like I said, I can shoot a really big coral head, say the size of the TV, and I can probably be like that far away from that and get the whole thing in my camera. Okay. And so those lenses really help underwater. And on land, if you shoot pictures of people or whatever, or buildings with fisheye lenses, they look all funky, right? But underwater, there are no straight lines. And so you don't even notice it, okay? And also the important thing is shooting subjects to fit your lens. So if you have a 60mm macro lens on and a manta ray swims by, just let it go, you know, or use your GoPro that you have mounted on your housing. Some people go underwater, they try to shoot everything with one lens, and that's not how you get good photos. To really be focused. And again, talk about getting close, how important that is. It's super close and super important. You know, macro subjects, I'm usually shooting stuff 4 inches, maybe 12 inches away from my lens. And then for wide angle, you know, set it 1 to 2 feet away. If it's like more than 3 feet, the only thing I'm shooting with that, maybe like a whale shark or a shipwreck or something like that. And if I'm shooting much more than like 3 feet away, I usually will turn off the strobes because all I'm going to do is illuminate all those particles in the water.
Mm.
And I'll see people, just like when you go to a ball game or something, you'll see people on the stands using their flashes, you know, it's like, it's not working, you know. So let's focus on focus, talk about focus a bit. So now we're talking about how sharpness is impacted by focus. So pretty much all cameras these days have multiple focus modes. It's really important to you to learn what these different modes do on your camera. And you also need to know what mode you're using so you know how it's going to perform on a particular subject. Also, good eyes help a lot of times in getting good focus. It's challenging underwater. A lot of times people need corrective lenses. So sometimes people wear contacts underwater. Other people get masks with corrective lenses in them. And then also, it's important to adjust your diopter on your viewfinder if you have one on your camera, if you need that. And then, as I mentioned, the focus lights really help a lot. So even if your camera is able to focus, but you're not really able to see that subject well enough to know that if it's really in focus when you're about to squeeze the trigger, focus lights help. So viewfinder diopter, you know, it's important to adjust that for your eyes, be it land camera or underwater. And I put this in there, you know, this is like my D500. I don't even know how many my Z7 II has, but it has 153 focus points, 55 of which are user selectable, okay? That is compared to my first DSLR, which is the Nikon D100 from like 2003 or something. They have 5 focus points. That was the greatest technology at the time. And then now you also have all different focus modes. You got the single point, you got the dynamic or the group or the wide, you know, the whole screen. So there's so many different variables. I'm not going to tell you when to use what, but it is important for you to know what your camera can do and what it's set in. So, you know, when you're having problems with focus, you realize, oh, because I'm in this other mode, I need to change it. Okay. You also have your continuous focus modes or your single servo modes or one shot AF. Everybody has different names for them. You know, continuous, when you hold the shutter down, and it's, no matter where you aim it, it's continuously focusing, right? That's good for moving stuff. If you want to focus and recompose, it's not good because, you know, you try to focus on something and recompose, and it's going to refocus over here. That's when you want to use the one shot or the single servo or AFS. And you can focus on a person's face and then recompose and get the nice mountain in the background. But again, understanding your camera and understanding what mode you're in is critically important. Underwater, I typically, for stationary stuff, I'll use the AFS, which is a single. That way, because a lot of times when you're diving, stuff just pops up or comes out or whatever. You don't know what's going on. So if you have some crazy mode selected or your focus points off to the side somewhere, you don't have time to adjust things a lot of times, you know. And so I usually just keep it in the center, and I can focus on something, recompose if I need to, or I can focus on the eye very quickly. And if something is really not moving, then a lot of times I'll move the focus point around to get to their eye, something like that. But things have different levels of stationariness underwater. You know, there's moving and there's not moving, and then there's really not moving. So this is an example. You know, I would move the focus point to the eye. So if I'm drifting in and out a little bit, I can get that eye in focus. So for moving subjects, I will use AFC a lot of times. And this is particularly when the subject is flittering about. So this is an example. This is an Anthias, and they tend to sit in the current like this, getting little particles that are flipping by, you know, they'll jump up and grab, but they're always aiming in the same direction. So, you know, you can put your focus point to upper right somewhere, so you'll be in line with the eye of the subject. And then you have it on continuous, and you can just sort of track them as they're moving around. And then again, focus where, this fish is at an angle, so if you were focusing in the center and just shot it like that, it would be out of focus on the eye, okay? So you want to make sure you get the eye. Just like here's an example, I gave my wife my camera and it would just sit on fixed center point, and she took a picture of me, she knows she wanted me on the thirds over there, but it just went right through and focused on the building in the background. And yes.
So what kind of apertures were you shooting most of the time?
I'm using a flash for most of the stuff underwater. So for macro stuff, I shoot a lot, really f/16, maybe f/11, f/22. And then for wide angle stuff, it depends on how much ambient light's there. I try not to go much below f/8.
So you get pretty good depth of field. then.
Yeah. On the wide angles particularly, yes.
Now, when you're underwater, these fish are always moving and
Right.
it's hard to get up to them. How do you get some of those shots? You get so close.
Going
Because you go-
slowly,
and not-
being calm, moving slowly, being neutrally buoyant, not flopping around. Stuff like that. It does take a little practice. And the other one is watching the fish, because a lot of the reef fish will have a pattern. They'll swim around the coral head, they'll go through this hole and come around the top. So if you watch them, then you say, okay, I know he's gonna swim in front of the orange sponge. So you just kind of work your way down there and wait for him to come out again and shoot it. So it takes some work.
How long do you stay down when you're down?
Normal dive, what we're doing is just like an hour or so.
Mhm,
If it's a really active or deep dive, it'll maybe 30 minutes. If
mhm.
it's a shallower dive where you're diving like what we call muck diving, which you're kind of diving over sand, maybe it's only 30 feet, maybe an hour and a half.
Mm.
So it varies, but 30 minutes to an hour and a half would pretty much be the full range, but I would say hour-ish, 50 minutes is
Mhm.
pretty common. I had a friend several years ago that went on a trip and she was complaining about all of her pictures. The focus was terrible. And so she showed me a series of anemone fish and the anemone, and every one of the anemone fish was out of focus, but the tentacles of the anemone were in focus. And so she had her camera set up so it was focusing on the closest thing. Okay. And so it was always picking up the anemone's tentacles, basically, and not ever the fish. And so this is an example. In this photo, if it was set up that way, it would be getting the seashell in the little girl's hand, not the little girl's eyes that you actually want in focus. So again, I'm just trying to tell you, make sure you know your camera system, what focus mode you're using, and is that really the best focus mode to, for your particular subject. There's so many good videos out there now, like YouTube videos, that can tell you how to set up your camera for birds or flambirds or just anything. And they're very, very handy if you find a good set of videos for your camera. So water and light. How are we doing on time? Okay. Water absorbs different colors of sunlight at different depths. Okay. So by about 15 feet, red, if you have red scuba gear, it is now brown looking. Okay. And then yellow will stay a little longer, and then blues and greens. And so about 65, 75 feet, pretty much everything looks blue. I mean, my eyes are adjusted that I know when I see something red at say 80 feet, it looks almost black. Okay, if it's a dark red color, it's gonna look black. So when I see something black underwater, I'm pretty sure it's red, and I'll take a picture, and sure enough, it's red, like a sponge or a coral or something. And I remember one time on a trip recently, my buddy's like, why were you shooting that black thing? I'm like, because it's red. Anyways, so if you want color down there, you got to bring light. Okay, either lights like the video lights or flashes, strobes. And so because you're always dealing with artificial light, this opens up a whole bunch of can of worms for your camera's metering and exposure systems. So programmable auto modes. They do a good job of creating proper exposure for average situations, okay? And that's what they're really made for. And now they're real smart and they can tell the difference between snow and trees or whatever, so they're getting smarter. But underwater is typically not an average photographic situation, okay? Some cameras have underwater mode now, and all they're doing really there is pumping up the reds and the colors, and they're not doing a lot else, but they do a good job for some situations. And not only underwater, but a lot of other scenes, which I'll share a few with you, are not really average. So your camera has some struggles with. For me, I shoot in manual. I have my camera in manual, and I also shoot my strobes in manual. This gives me complete control over the exposures, the balance of the artificial lit portion and the blue water. Okay, so it allows me to really balance things the way I want them to look. So balancing strobe and natural light. If you want that blue water background, this is something you really gotta learn to do. You can't go down there and program an auto and have it do this for you most of the time. For wide angle shots, you really want the blue water because that's kind of how it looks down there. Well, the blue water part, not the red in the fan. And so you don't want the background to be too light or black. You want that nice blue water. And so this is a shipwreck propeller with all the coral, the sponges and stuff going on in the blue water background. And then also with film, it used to be really difficult to get blue water background for macro shots, but now with digital, it's very doable. And so it adds interest, in my opinion. So this is just showing that you can control that background. This is the same oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico, the same dive. These are blendings. They're probably about, I don't know, size of my finger, I'd say. They live in barnacles or old barnacles that don't have the animal anymore. And so you can see I can make a blue background or a black background. Okay. It's something that you can do. I say avoid the blahs, blue or black is fine, but the right side there is kind of a blah. It's not really blue. It's not really black. I don't like that. Okay. So I always say avoid the blahs on your backgrounds. So we're going to talk a little bit about exposure, and y'all may know all this already. I don't know, but I feel like I have to talk about it. So what controls the light? The strobe lit portion of the image is controlled by the ISO, the f-stop, the strobe output, and the strobe to subject distance, okay? And then the natural light portion is controlled by the ISO, the f-stop, and the shutter speed, okay? So you'll notice that the shutter speed is only working on the natural light part of the exposure, and that's your key for adjusting that background color, okay? Oh, do you want to take a picture of that? Go ahead.
Oh, thank you.
That's how you're picking your camera up.
Okay.
So I saw a lot of lighting workshops for the underwater photography club and use Mr. Potato Head. And so we're going to go through a couple of these slides of Mr. Potato Head. So you'll notice everything is constant. The strobe is on manual, everything is constant except I'm varying the shutter speed into the series images. And so the shutter speed is only impacting the background. You see, looking out my dining room window, how it's gotten brighter with slower shutter speeds. And then the f-stop, you'll notice it impacts both the background and the strobe lit portion of the image, okay? And then your ISO will also impact both. And then, of course, changing the strobe power doesn't impact the background, only the strobe illuminated portion. And then changing the strobe to subject distance, because, if I shoot something and it's a little too bright, I know if I back up just a smidge, it's probably all it takes, okay? And so changing that strobe to subject distance, the further away you get with the constant strobe output, the darker the exposure on that portion will be. So Mr. Potato Head says, if you're using a flash and also trying to get a natural light portion of the scene properly exposed, manipulate the shutter speed to fine tune the natural light in the image, okay? And so by learning to do this underwater, it also comes in quite handy on land. So this is my son years ago. Like I said, now he's a junior at A&M. This is on the aircraft carrier down in Corpus Christi. I took a picture of him just on program mode, but I really wanted the bridge in the background to be properly exposed with the sunset. So by changing my settings, going to manual mode, you can get that picture that you really wanted to create instead of what the camera wanted to create, okay? And similar situation here, my kid's at Historic Mission Control at NASA. Yeah, you see the kids great, but you don't see the mission control portion of the picture. And so you'll see the lady in the red dots on the right, the red and white dots. So it looks like a totally different picture. But there's that lady still. So this is my wife's aunt and uncle from Japan. My wife's half Japanese. And so they were visiting from Japan. So now we have all the mission control stuff exposed by changing the settings and taking control of the camera instead of just relying on program mode or auto mode. So then, you learn to do that kind of stuff. You can make pictures of your daughter like this or whatever. So that's my daughter on the left. So now, this is a couple years ago, maybe maybe a year or two ago. So by understanding how exposure works and balancing the flash and the natural light, it will help you not being afraid of shooting in manual mode and understand how to do all this stuff and create those pictures that program mode really can't create. So on to any questions?
Did you ever shoot film underwater?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so the advantage I'm thinking really comes out with digital because you can review.
Yeah, huge.
And because with film. if you
Huge.
did- if it's too
And you only
bright,
got
it's too
36
bright.
shots and you didn't know until you got back and got in the club. Yeah. I was pretty good on my game at the end of the film days, and I was kind of bummed out when digital came because anybody could do it. You know? I mean, I had it pretty nailed. I knew how to do it, with film. I shot slides and, we did a lot of slide presentations and contests and stuff.
And
But-
it's cheaper.
Yeah, it's cheaper and you can take a lot more pictures on a dive. Yes.
How did you get the very black background with the very brightly lit fish?
Well, the fish I did with the strobe, the flash.
Right,
In the background, I increase my shutter speed and also I can crank up my strobe power higher and close my aperture down. Okay, so when you close your aperture and increase your shutter speed, you're knocking that blue water background to black. And to balance out the smaller aperture, I just put my strobe power higher. Does that make sense? But playing with that stuff and understanding it can come in very handy.
There's a lot of art to it.
Work.
A lot of pictures. Like I said, we've done workshops with the underwater club where we set up little toys or whatever and a window in the background, and we teach them how to balance the strobe on the little toys with the light out the backyard of the community center we meet at.
I think one of the challenges is because the fish are moving so quickly is to catch them without getting the blur. So what kind of shutter speed?
Yeah, usually on the macro stuff, I'm using the higher shutter speeds unless I'm trying to get blue water. If I'm not getting blue water, I'm shooting at like a 1/160th or 2/200th of a second, which is like about the high end of my sync speed. And then if I'm trying to get blue water, I'll drop it way down, but I'm not gonna do that on a fish that's moving a lot. If it's just a coral or a fish that's just sitting there, then I can drop it way down and handhold it fairly well. What's that mean? How much?
5 minutes.
Okay, negative space. We're gonna talk really fast. So negative space is everything in the image that is not the actual subject. Okay, anything surrounding the fish, for example. It shouldn't distract from the subject like a telephone pole coming out of somebody's head, right? Ideally, it should enhance the subject. The background of coral reef can be very, very busy. There's a lot of crap there. A lot of things blend into the coral reef because they evolved that way to survive, right? So I really try to find negative space that'll make the subject stand out. And a lot of times I'll find a good negative space first and then find something to swim in front of it. So here's a photo of a butterfly fish. Technically, it's fine. Exposure is good. Focus is good. But it just kind of blends in and, it's all disturbed. There's so many lines and things going on there that it doesn't stand out. Obviously, doing black background, everything kind of pops out. Okay, but you don't always have to do black background. You have anemone fish in its home. You just want to make sure that all four corners are covered with the anemone fish. So you don't have a rock sticking out in the corner or something. These are tunicates. They're little filter feeding organisms. This is a colony of them. I like them. They come in a lot of shapes and sizes, but a lot of times they're in the busy area. When I see one with a cool background, a very, simple background, I always try to shoot them. Red sea whips, and I always find them. I try to find fish in them or swimming by. Fan corals, same thing, just to make that subject stand out. This is a frogfish. See his mouth and then the eye there. They blended in reef, but this one's sitting in a pinkish colored sponge. So it's like, okay, great. Take a picture, you can kind of tell it's a fish. Again, getting all four corners clean. This is a Christmas tree worm. So this is the little feeding appendages of the worm that come out. And usually, again, they're in a busy area. So here it's a nice, clean star coral it's on. I shoot a lot, and you'll see it in a lot of my photos with the black background. And that's what this thing, it's a snoot. So there's a flash. And then this is a snoot that really directs the light. So it's only going to a very small portion of the frame. And there's actually this little aperture card involved that you put in that can make the light smaller or larger. Okay. And so this enables you to really target your light and not light up all the garbage around your subject. Another way to get softer background, cleaner background is to frame in such a manner that the background behind your subject is a bit further away. Okay. And so that makes it all sort of blur out to do the depth of field. Or you can fill the whole frame with your subject, or fill the frame with part of your subject. or fill the frame with a bunch of subjects. Okay, but you know, all these things have something in common that they're clean, you know, they don't have crap in the picture. So don't fear the negative. If the negative space is interesting, don't be afraid to have the subject small and allow negative space. I have more to talk about here, but since we're in time crunch, I will not. So here we have, you know, the brain coral with a little goby and a little flatworm moving across some star coral, it looks like. A zebra crab on a fire urchin. The blending I have a couple times in here on a red sponge because the backgrounds are all interesting, so it's okay to leave a lot of background. And this is a picture in Iceland. I kind of like the little farmhouse out there. You see some emotion here. You know, it's very lonely but peaceful. You know, it's just out there in the middle of nowhere all by itself. A lot of that clean, calm background. You know, lady in China walking, you know, a lot of negative space and give the eye somewhere to move around, give some depth to the photo. Again, the picture, the subject is Degarde, but it's that negative space background that makes the picture interesting. Okay. These are a couple spots where I picked the negative space first and waited for something to happen. So on the right, I like this little arch, and sure enough, here comes a monk out on a cell phone. So, and the same on the left. I like the scene, and I just waited for someone to come down the street, and the guy comes riding a bike. And it can be as simple as when you're taking a picture of somebody. Where are you going to make them stand? What are they going to stand in front of? My daughter always liked to have her face painted if we went to SeaWorld or Disney World or something. And so, you know, I tried to find a nice background to put her in front of. This photo, originally I was going to shoot this guy. I was kneeling down a bit to get on his level, but you see the red line. Well, it's kind of cut off here, but there's red paint up there. And when I first composed it, the red line was like right here. So I didn't like it, so I had to stand back up some. So the red line was just at a border, and I kind of liked it in the photo to complement his green, and also red's like the color of China. When I went to Peru a few years ago, we went on spring break, and my buddy said, well, I want you to send me a selfie with a llama. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. You know, but we went to this animal rehab kind of place, and sure enough, I got a selfie with the llama. But you can see in the background, there's a lot of stuff, you know, it looked like a little rehab place. He had a bear in the background, a lot of other animals. There's a lot of cages and enclosures, not very attractive. But I was able to go on one side, shoot up at the hillside, and get a nice background. I don't like the blue sky up in the top left, so I actually have another version where I cloned that out and just have it all mountain up there. But the coolest thing on the llama was his eye. I mean, look at the iris, the shape of it, or the pupil, or the iris, either one. But also you can see my reflection in there. How much you can see. So, yeah, that was a really cool eye. So a lot of times negative space is the really only thing that makes the photo of interest. And so it's just like some metal clad building. Let's see, let me see what I have left. Oh, I need like 2 minutes. Can I have 2 minutes? You sure? Oh, okay. So we're going to talk now about having a conversation with your subject. Like I said, a lot of new divers, they always shoot down at subjects. You would never have a conversation looking down on somebody like that, right? So I don't know, have you ever heard of Ernest Brooks or Ernie Brooks? Okay, good.
I went to Brooks.
Did you really? Awesome. Okay.
I learned to dive and just.
Awesome. Yeah, you said Santa Barbara, right? So I was able to walk. He was in town for a scuba symposium called Sea Space years ago, and we were kind of his minders or whatever, you know, my wife and I. And so we walked through the photo contest, all the print contests, and he critiqued all of them for us, just, you know, hanging out with us. And he said, well, you got to shoot it like you're having a conversation. And I always remember that. It was really good. And so like this, you're not having a conversation. I like this picture because it's one of the few photos of this particular fish I have. But he's not engaged, right? He is ignoring you. You're not having a conversation with this guy. Same here. He's not having a conversation. It's better, okay? But you want to have your subject engage with you like you're going to talk to them in a conversation. So always try to approach things at an angle like you're trying to talk to them, okay? Having a conversation. And even, you know, we always say don't shoot down, but people are like, well, you know, so-and-so lives right on the bottom. How do you not shoot down? You get down there with them, okay? Or you find one that's a little elevated on a little hump. You know, there's always, this is a crocodile fish and they live on the bottom, but you know, you're able to find them sometimes a little elevated. Even nudibranchs, they live on the bottom, but you got to get down there on their level, have a conversation. Flounder, they really live on the bottom, right? So You find one that's a little elevated on a little ridge of sand and go down there and have a conversation with it. So this is what it looks like when you shoot down a flounder. You can barely see it. Okay. So that's about it. I want to remind you to have a conversation with your subjects. If you're interested in underwater photography or scuba diving, I say go do it. We have a lot of people in my underwater photography club, a lot of my dive buddies, they're like in their 70s and stuff, still going at it. I have a buddy that's 84 now. He still goes spearfishing in the Gulf of Mexico at the oil rigs. And so you can still dive when you're up there in age, and it's a lot of fun. That's it. Any questions? I can have the cameras up here if anybody wants to look. Oh, also, I meant to put in the Dang Slideshow plug. Our club is doing, this will be our third Houston Underwater Film Festival. It's April 29th and 30th at Match Theater in Midtown in Houston. And I meant to put the trailer in here and I forgot.
Send it to me.
Okay, but I also have some cards on HUFs, and on the HUFs website, you'll see a little button for HUF, HUFF, the Houston Underwater Film Festival. It's really cool. Oh, I do, but I didn't know if I had time. You're cutting me off.
No, we'll do, we'll get some intermission now.
You're getting the hook. Okay, we have intermission now.
Right, and this is just my regular slide on Facebook of where to get a hold of us, where to, in between our meetings. The wildflower postings recently are on there, including the trip tomorrow to Brenham. And then Chuck, did you want to talk about anything for the?
Let's go ahead and skip through this. We have.
Okay. All right, and then activities, Jim?
Yeah, we're going tomorrow to chase the wildflowers over by Brenham. And that'll be a day trip. And then in April, we're planning to go down to the tall ships on Friday. I think it's the 14th, John. Is Friday the 14th?
I guess.
It'll be a one-day trip down there. The place opens at you'll need to go online to buy tickets if you're wanting to go. We'll be sending out. We need to know what the count's going to be for carpooling, but a ticket that gets you into all the ships and stuff's $25. And
Jim, I'm going to interrupt you a minute. On the calendar, it has that we're meeting up at 7:30 and we changed that. So if someone else is joining us, I want to make sure they know we're meeting at 8.
yeah, it's for tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah, it's 8 o'clock. And everybody that signed up has been notified of that.
If some other people that hadn't signed up yet saw that and wanted to join us, that would be wonderful, but we just want to make sure the time was
They
right.
haven't signed up, they don't have a seat in the carpools. There's a reason to sign up.
We can cozy up.
Yeah.
Come on.
I have to sit for about 30 minutes while I'm
Okay.
charging it.
The only other thing is, I've listed on this sheet, so you can look at your leisure, some multi-day trips. And the ones that I mentioned was Vicksburg and Austin. If anybody has any ideas or interest in like a long weekend trip, notify me and we'll add that, but we've got to come up with a plan. I don't think in this year, I don't think this club has the appetite for a week-long club trip, so I'm not going to plan anything.
Thank you, Jim. All right, so I talked about this last month, that we have an annular and a solar eclipse coming. So I'm looking at putting together an August workshop for anyone who is interested in doing photographing the solar eclipse and the annular. Annular is the rim. It's not completely total. The total solar is the sun is completely included. So look for, have to look at dates and see what traveling we're doing to get a date to make sure that I'm here in town. And I'll put it out on the website. And so if anyone is interested, probably maybe the library or something.
We can get a room going.
Yeah, so I need to talk to Chuck about it.
They're already got reservations in Fredericksburg
Yeah,
planned for next year.
yeah. Well, we have a son in Wimberley, so we're good. And so we're going on to share and learn. So this is just, we're loading up your photos and 3 photos per person. Some of them have 4 this month, so kind of watch that. And we're going to go ahead and start with the share and learn. So hit exit. Okay, good.
don't want to hold things up, but one quick thing.
Mhm.
On the Galveston trip where you deal with boats.
Oh,
There is on the day before, the 13th, there's gonna be I don't know what you would call it. They're gonna be sailing by.
is that a regatta?
Pardon me?
Would that be a regatta type thing?
Not on
No,
square
they-
acres.
No.
What they're
not-
gonna do is, if you go down on the seawall,
Uh-huh.
they'll go down the seawall.
Yes.
And then a question I don't have answered yet is, at what point will they turn,
Mhm.
come down the ship channel, and then back in the dock in Galveston?
I
Uh,
don't know that either. I actually booked passage on one of those, not the. I had they'll take off at about 9
Over there.
and go out and then maybe turn around and go back.
Assuming there's a-
Right.
Great to see. Hi.
Carl, is that the only one you brought?
Well, I've got photos, mounted ones of this, but I think just look at this, I guess.
Okay, all right.
The display.
Okay. In February, my wife and I went down to Antarctica.
Oh,
We got on a little, it was a 50-year-old NOAA research ship that took off. It was billed as a 10-day cruise, but we actually spent 4 days in Antarctica. And we were going through a channel between the Antarctic mainland and an island. And it was fairly narrow, and I decided I wanted to take a picture of it. So I decided that I'd try a panoramic picture, which I hadn't done before. And so I set my camera and I took must be about 8 or 10 photos to get it all in. And then after I got home, I put it all together. Now, one thing, I wished I made it a little bit taller.
You know, one of the secrets for panoramas is don't hold your camera in landscape mode. You turn it vertical.
Yes, I
So
did.
that- Oh, you did?
I
Oh,
did. But it's still,
Yeah, okay.
it was vertical and I needed like 10 or 12,
Hmm.
or I don't remember exactly how many.
You could probably make a print that would cover this entire wall. And it would look-
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, this was my first attempt at doing a panorama and I thought it came out pretty nice. So I decided to get it printed and then I couldn't find a frame anywhere, so I had to make my own.
Yeah.
That's
But-
nice.
Oh,
But that was fun.
That is nice.
That is nice. Okay, thank you.
Anyway,
Did you want to go back to the others?
yeah, the other one, so these were just some photos that we took at one of the
Oh, they're the
places where
photos.
we stopped, yeah.
Well, look at that.
So,
Let's try here. Do I hear 50? Can I hear 10?
No, I'm playing big.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
so we stopped at a place called Peterman Island and we actually went hiking. And this seal was a good half, 3/4 of a mile from the beach. And he had climbed up quite a ways to get where it was. And I wasn't sure why a seal was climbing up all that way. But there were penguins up there along with the seal. And so he was sitting on top of this rock and he was mostly sunning himself. And I had to stand there for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes to get him to decide to get up and look around and so on. And then I was able to get that picture. And then the other one, there's a million penguins down there, many different. We saw at least 3 different species of penguins, and they were having their chicks and so on. So they're really, they're really cute and so on. The nice thing about penguins is they're very slow. And so they'll let you get pretty close and they'll avoid you when they're going, places, but they don't seem to be afraid of you. So you get pictures. Anyway.
Very nice.
Chris,
Me? Okay, all right, well,
Just learning is fun. This people on Zoom and tell me where to adjust the cameras. It's good. Thank you.
I mostly do portraits around the house for our wall space. And I tend to do big prints on a lot of my walls. This is from my office, my home office. This was a shot done by my granddaughters, Kirsten and Emily. And just to give you some perspective, she's in 9th grade now and she's married. But we were shooting.
Is that a film shot?
It could have been, I guess. We were shooting family portraits for Christmas as a favor to my daughter-in-law. And after all this shooting in formal wear, the kids started getting into it. And they actually started putting on different outfits because they were in casual wear. And this little girl was misbehaving horribly. I couldn't get a good look out of her. And then her sister just came up and put her arms around her like this, and she just had that look. And I snapped the shot, and out of about 30 shots, this was the best one. And then when I looked at it, I said, "Well, it's nice in color." They swim all summer long, so they're always suntanned. And Kirsten had that white blonde hair. But I thought black and white, and I do a lot of times on print for black and white, I'll do what they call a metallic print. It's not the one on metal, but it's on like a metal paper stock. And it just gives it a really nice, to me, there's a lot of good tonal quality in it.
Nice.
Okay, next shot. My daughter got married and she lived in Bremerton, which is on the west side of the Seattle Puget Sound. And you got to really be trusting fate to have a outdoor wedding in the Pacific Northwest. And they were so worried about weather, and it turned out to be a beautiful day. And being the father of the bride, I was in the front row. I don't do wedding photography, and I expect them to pay for a photographer so I can enjoy myself. But I was sitting there, and with the same little camera I've been taking pictures with tonight, it's a crop sensor Canon, and it's got an 11 to 22 millimeter lens. So at 11, I said, "Oh, I can get this towering, the Pacific Northwest has such beautiful trees." And my son-in-law has some Scottish heritage, so he and his groomsmen were all in kilts, and it turned out to be a very nice shot. There's another one of a family member. These are my daughter Deirdre and Caitlin, my granddaughter. And this was another who grew up in Alaska shooting these. She lived with my son who was up there at the time. And by the time we got around to shooting these individual shots, Caitlin, who's a challenging child, she was horrible. Her mother almost went off and cried at one point because we couldn't get a good shot. And finally, I don't know what we did, but she smiled. My daughter's always been very photogenic, so I had no problem getting her. And I had dragged up there my Canon 85 millimeter f1.2 portrait lens, which weighs about like 4 pounds, but it gave it's a beautiful portrait lens because the depth of field is so short. As long as you get them in the same plane, the focus just falls off in the background. And one last bigger shot. I was one of those people who snuck in a fourth one. So this is one more family. This is my son Liam. Some people say it sort of looks like you about 30 years ago. I know it's when he's getting gray now. I'm going, it's really, Anyway, so he had a new child at this point, Jackson, and we had been visiting, and it was a horrible rainy day. We were indoors because you couldn't go outdoors. This is in South Carolina, and he happened to come home from work, and we were standing around. He took the baby, and all of a sudden, the sun came out, and it was shining through this big glass window, but a soft shine and not a hard light. And I just went, "That's the shot," and just clicked a couple exposures. So that's that. I do all my own matting too. I mat all my prints at home. One of our bedrooms is got nothing but tables with mat board. So when people come to visit, we have to move it.
Okay, for my first thought, you want to have a little bit of a story here. I don't have this frame. There's always a difference between what you have printed and what you hang on the wall. This one I had printed, I don't have it hanging on the wall because I don't have any room that color. Or it wouldn't go with anything, but I do like the picture. The story behind this is, it was a number of years ago, I went down to Fulton, little town on the coast, to get on a boat to go out and see the cranes in Aransas or whatever it was. And it was one of my first times around birders. And I had bought this, what I thought was a big lens. It turns out to be a little thing. It's about that long. I was getting on the boat and all these birders are standing there and they had lenses like David knows about these things. You know, these lenses that you can put on the ground and the top lenses here. And they're, showing each other the lenses and stuff. And the sunrise comes up. And of course, I'm a landscape photographer, but I'm taking pictures of this stuff. None of those guys took one picture of this. And I could not believe it. I mean, this was a beautiful, beautiful morning. Fulton, Texas, with a little hotel right near the harbor. Absolutely gorgeous morning. I didn't get any other pictures that day. That was the one I got.
You did good.
Oh, good. Which is the next one here? Yeah. This is another good story. This town here was one that Connie put me on. Westminster? Westminster is northeast of Dallas. It's a little ghost town, if you will. There's a little bar here called the Gar Hole. You can't see it very well. Gar Hole. And the guy that runs it's a school teacher, retired school teacher. I was out there taking pictures. He came out and said, "Dog," and started talking to me. He took me into the Gar Hole. It's a bar. It's a great place. They got written up in Dallas Magazine about 2-3 weeks ago as the best little roadhouse in North Texas. I guess he got his inspiration from Lukenbach, and that's what the whole sort of the ambiance is. But this was an old bank, and he took me back to the back of the bank, and he showed me a vault there, the old vault, and he gave me a story, whether it's true or not, I don't know. Is that when the bank was back in the early 1900s or whatever, when Bonnie and Clyde were in this area, because Bonnie and Clyde roamed this whole area. The people in the bank were up front, and there's a door that swung, sort of blocked the back entrance. Well, Bonnie and Clyde snuck in the back, cleaned out the vault, and left, and they stole $85 or something like that. Okay, but somebody, as they left, somebody saw Bonnie and Clyde leaving. So the big story is that Bonnie and Clyde rode, but they were so embarrassed they didn't report it to the police. You know, that they were able to be robbed by Bonnie and Clyde just by sneaking in the back door and cleaning up. But I gave this guy, I took this picture after, and I took it with an infrared camera, by the way. I did a lot of what I'm taking is infrared now. And I gave him this picture, and he uses it now in his advertisements, and he has a bunch of things. I've seen this show up several times in some of his ads, which is nice. It's a nice use of the picture. And like I like a little bit of a metallic shine, black and whites. The ones I hang on my walls are almost inevitably black and white. This next one here is actually, I didn't bring, I forgot. It's still hanging in the hallway. When I ran out of the house, I didn't take it off the wall. I do a lot of what I call still life compositions or composites. This is a still life. These flowers here are from my daughter's wedding. She was married about 25 years ago. And it's really, if you say the original, it looks nothing like this. I do a lot of Photoshop. So that light wasn't even on. Okay, that's fake and everything else, but it's a still life composite. I have a bunch of those. I have several large ones. They make interesting pictures. They're pretty, they're peaceful. They're nice. They're a nice picture. And then this last one, Steve Hansen, I can thank him for this one. Steve got me involved in going to the Humboldt Rodeo, and you've seen a lot of his pictures, and they're really fabulous. A lot of people take pictures of the guy riding the horse. But you know, if you look around, the guys who have to handle these horses after the guy's ridden them, and these horses are wild. Look at the eyes. Yeah, I mean, look at those eyes and stuff. I mean, there's a lot of action, a lot of fear, a lot of power in that picture, in my mind. Again, black and white, and I have that one framed, and on the wall. I took it off. I remember to take this one off the wall, but I just love the power of the frame, the speed, everything you see. There's a lot of drama in that.
Great in black and white.
Yeah,
really nice too.
James is on, it's on Zoom.
Is on, yeah, if you're on Zoom, you can speak up.
Okay, I unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. this is from our last trip to Africa. And these were 5 cheetahs that hang out together. Evidently, they're all males that were kicked out of their packs. And so now they hang out. I mean, the wardens and everybody, the game people out there remarked on them all the time, said, hope we see him. Sure enough, we found him after they just killed the wildebeest. You can see the one in the upper left has got red all over his face and the blood. He's just been digging into the thing. And when we took this picture, there were probably 20 different vehicles surrounding them. Everybody's taking pictures. And everybody's always warned there, don't get out of the vehicle. Well, one of the vehicles engine wouldn't start. And so the driver got out to look to see what was wrong with it. And the cheetahs you can see what they're doing right there. They're all looking to see what's happening over there because they have to decide if that guy is something to eat or not. It immediately got their attention when he stood up outside the driver's door. And so they actually took about 5 vehicles over there and kind of made a shield so that the cheetahs couldn't see that he was actually out of the truck trying to fix it. And this is the cathedral in Finland, in Helsinki, Finland. At night, there's a big Christmas market, a huge Christmas market right in front of it. And I didn't put that into this picture. It's just so remarkable because of the sky and the way the building was lit up. But I included these 2 because I don't know how many of you are aware, but CVS and Walgreens generally have one of them every month has a program where you can go and get a free print. And these 2 were 11 by 14 prints, I guess, that I got free one from Walgreens and one from CVS. And generally one of them has a print every month, either a 10 by 8 by 10 or 11 by 14. You just have to kind of watch Slick Deals to see when they're available. That's the 2 I brought for tonight.
Oh, excellent.
I didn't send any in, but I have some here.
Do you?
I didn't send any in.
Jim?
So we're going to go run tomorrow. This is the shot. I didn't bring a print of this shot, but I do have a print. I printed this one like 16 by 20 and hung in my office for a long time. I like stuff in the background of blue bonnets.
Be careful with the wire.
Ooh, I see it. Okay.
Watch the cord.
Oh, there's another cord. Tricky. I shouldn't have come this way. Oh well. All right, you can go to the next one. See which one is the next one.
The next one?
Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you go to this one and come back to that one? So this is at the Keukenhof Gardens north of Amsterdam. It was a cold, rainy, miserable day when we were there. We were there with 2 other couples, but it was a great day to take pictures. I mean, because of the clouds, the light was really soft. There were water droplets on everything. This is one of 6 pictures that I had hanging in my office. I have another companion to this one that's 24 by 36 like this, and then 4 16 by 20s, all of different tulips. Makes for a really nice set. But my traveling companions kept saying, "Oh, let's go," and I kept saying, "No, I want to take more pictures. We ended up being there 2.5 hours. But great place to go if you ever get a chance. I know some of you have been there already. So this next one was one of my first attempts at a panorama. And don't worry, I got another copy of it.
Always print 2 of everything.
So how do you do this? Yeah, let's just unfold this. So I ran a group at an office building over in the Woodlands for about 3 years. We had a inside conference room that looked like a cave. And so there was one wall that I thought this would be perfect on. This is a panorama of the Tetons over Lake Jackson. It was taken from the dam on Lake Jackson. If you look down in this corner, if you look down in that corner, you can see a little piece of the dam. But I think this is like 5 shots combined out of my Nikon 800. And so it's now framed and hanging in a conference room over in the Woodlands, and it just looks like a really big picture window, you know, in the side of that conference room. So it's
Except that's not Houston.
I think Jim wins the prize for the largest.
My definition of a good picture is one that you can print large and have it look nice, but so this is a combination of 5. This one, by the way, is 3 foot tall and 12 foot wide.
Why don't we set up a typical roll?
All right. I'm sorry. I think there's like 5 or 6 frames in there.
Where did you have it printed?
I'm sorry.
Where did you have it printed?
So I worked for Chevron Phillips. We're the ones with that lab down there in the front of Kingwood. And there's a gentleman that works there who's a great photographer and a great printer. And he has a printer that's 3 feet wide that will do rolls. And he printed this book.
I used to have one that would do 24 and 100 feet. But never clean your print head with windows.
We have to thank John for the easel that he brought.
That's a nice idea.
John has everything, you know.
This is a still life that I took down at East End Park. Saw this great leaf, and then I decided, well, I need to find some way to take a picture of it. So I dropped it in the water and I started taking pictures of it with my iPhone. And what happened is that I could see all of these branches in the pictures because the water was still. So I took a limb, sucked the water, and it caused ripples everywhere, and it made the picture. Because if I tried taking it just with still water, you would get all these reflections of these limbs. So
Good job.
Very nice, very nice. The colors are different between the print and the.
Yes.
absolutely.
Is that just?
Well, that part of it is the display is always a little washed out.
Oh, okay, it's the display.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Last fall, some of us went to out to Santa Fe, and then we went out to the Coast Ranch, and when what's the name of that?
George O'Keefe.
George O'Keefe's Ranch. Well, this Black Mountain or Black Mesa is something that she has in the background of many of her pieces of art. And so we were leaving there and going down the road. I looked over and the light hit this mesa just right. Again, I pulled my iPhone out. The car is moving and I take a picture.
Really?
Okay, so, well, I had it on burst. And so I took quite a few pictures, and the picture before this and the picture after this has a car in it going the other way. So it was just serendipity that I got a halfway decent image out of it. That just proves the point that use the camera that you got and do what you can with it.
Don't be driving, because I was driving.
Yeah. Well, we had.
We were all going somewhere.
We had a destination in mind. We had a sunset to go catch. And so we had a destination in mind for that evening. So that's where we were headed while we went by here.
But just remember, that's the one that you're showing, not the sunset one.
Yep.
I want to say that Kevin, the next one, this is the first time he's had share and learn with us.
Obviously, I'm gonna hold the record for the smallest picture that they got the biggest picture. Actually, I took this photo, everybody's seen this photo, it's a really popular photo of the Mormon Ranch out at Tetons. I put this in there because my other 3 photos are all of Alaska, and I wanted y'all to think I take pictures of other places. So there's really nothing to that. What do you got next?
Oh.
This was a photo actually we took in Alaska. My wife and I actually, we went up with a tour and we stayed an extra couple of days, and somebody told us about this guy that would take us over to Brooks Falls. And so you've heard of Brooks Falls, but that's where the bears all go and they feed and all that. And so it was, we took a plane to land on some little airstrip in the middle of nowhere. They took us down to a river, took off from the water, you take off, you land in the middle of the lake, and you hike 2 miles into this fall. And it's really interesting because everybody thinks that's snow.
Yeah,
It's actually water.
yeah.
It's actually in the middle of a waterfall. And I've got a couple of really good shots of the bears there. So anyway. This is on that same trip, but we were actually the story behind this, we were going down a very shallow river, and we saw this eagle over on the side of the bank just was sitting there, and I said, stop. So I'm sitting there shooting all these photos, and this, the guy finally says, we gotta go, whatever. So we start taking off, and this eagle takes off and flies. I'm sitting up front of this boat, and the eagle literally is flying right in front of us, and I was like, trying to catch something. And I was amazed that it actually came out as clean as it did, to be honest with you. But if you look real closely, the eagle's got something in his mouth. Or something. He was over there eating on it. So yeah, that was pretty well. And then on that same boat trip, this is the world's smallest picture this week. It actually goes to my wife's office. I went to my wife's office and got it. This is actually, we were in Alaska. We were on a boat. And I took a picture originally. What makes this picture so cool actually is one of those pictures you took, and when you came back and looked at your computer, I first took it, I went in, whatever. But the whole background of the rock formation, which I thought was really cool, but really what you really look at when you see the sea lions, all tan in there, really kind of make it and bring it out somewhat as well. So my wife loves that shot, so she put it in our office. So.
What's the white on the rock? Is that?
I don't know. It's probably some sort of challenge. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's right. And that's not me.
Yeah.
We'll get the award for photographing the farthest. The super telephoto.
Yeah, I'm continuing my journey in astrophotography. We were in Hawaii and great spot for night photography. And this is Orion Galaxy. And I don't know if you read about this, but recently there's been this big aurora from the usually you see all this blue in the galaxy. Usually it's very red, and I thought this was really neat because it really shows all the pretty blues and the reds all together in a combination. And this is a stack of about 85 photos from it. I have a special camera for this. It's an astrophotography camera, which makes this all very possible.
It almost looks like it could be
Yeah.
So you use a tracker?
Yeah,
Do you use the star tracker?
he does.
Yeah.
He does. Yeah.
And Kathy, what's the next
Mhm.
one? Oh, and then we were on the same, and we took a walk along one of the beaches there. And I happened to have a polarizing lens on my camera, so I was able to get a nice shot of these 2 turtles sitting there in the water, and starting to use Luminar more now, kind of like Luminar, so I was able to really bring out a lot of the turtles. There's about 5 turtles all over there. And the last one, this is an older one. I don't know if anybody's been to the Monet Gardens right outside of Paris. They are just such a photography wonderland on there. And this is that famous picture that bridge over the water there, and just there. And that house, you can go to the house, you go to the gardens. It's just you know, if you're a photographer, you just love to stay there for a couple of weeks there.
We actually have that one 36 by 24 above the cabinets in the kitchen, but I wasn't gonna go down and take it.
The Subaru Crosstrek, dog tested.
Mute yourselves online, please.
I don't know, my pictures are not very, prints are not very big, but so it's not twofold here. These are just 8x10s, very simple frames. I got it at Michael's, like $4. And what we're trying to do is I'm trying to do a collage on my wall going upstairs to make them all the same pictures. So I'm going to be using these as one of the. I'm going to use it as to start up the exhibit we're going to do down at the Cove. So we got a backdrop set up. We agreed. The owners agreed to get it, allow us to use one of the walls. We got to cover up the wall with like a black backdrop. So have that, and then we're going to hang pictures on the wall with some information about the photo club, and we need y'all to help participate. And your prints, however you want to do it, doesn't have to be
It's
this
for
size.
rodeo only.
No,
Anything?
anything, but we're trying to, I think you'd like to probably keep it local to start with.
Yeah.
And so if you've got stuff that's local, you want to get a print put up, just again, to help push the club. And you know, you never know, you may have somebody wants to buy them.
Can you send me the information on that?
I will.
Okay.
We'll get that. I'm gonna be, obviously, I'll be gone over the summer. So
Sure, you can help me set it up for you too, right? Good. Is it okay to use those quick frame type of like then?
however you want to do it, but the problem we got is we got to hang it from using fish wire, from like something like this, a suspended ceiling. So we're gonna go right up against the wall, hang it there, drop it down. So you can get it out at the bottom.
I think, don't do anything important, because we used to have art, photo shows here.
They got a lot of
Mine
fish
got
wire.
knocked off. Like somebody was
Yeah,
watching.
so we got the walls there with 100 pictures on it, and this is a trial thing. So we're just gonna put a curtain, a black curtain,
All right.
and then we're hanging in front of the curtain. We're covering up the curtain.
Okay.
Yes, on the wall.
Alright. Did you want to talk about this or?
Yeah, okay, so the pictures themselves are from the Oval Rodeo. Not, this picture is from this year, one of the bull riders, and just happened to catch him. Everything, if you look at, leading lines, it's all right into where the focus of the picture ought to be, and even the background, the guys in the background are put it this way. So, yeah, it turned out real good. This is from a couple of years ago, one of the, this would have been bareback, it's a bareback rider. I just finished up. If you've never been to the rodeo, please go. It's the first weekend of February of every year. It's a great adventure. You get great shots from wherever you're at. I just happened to be down in the boxed area, barging in and asking for somebody to allow me to shoot pictures there.
Go to the Humble Rodeo, don't go to NRG Stadium. You can't get in.
Unless you have good earplugs.
And this is not a huge lens. This is the 70 to 200 that I'm using. With 2.8, and you can get great shots.
This is also the Education Association's fundraiser.
Yes, yeah, MLIC, their foundation. Yeah. And the last shot?
Oh, I think that was the last shot.
Oh, I thought I had three.
You didn't go to those two, did you?
Go back. One more. There.
Yeah, okay, so this was a saddle rock. And just like the way the tail was flipped up.
That's the tail?
Yeah.
Wow.
So again, it does not have to be this size. Any kind of framing you want, we're just gonna be able to hang it. And It could be color, it could be black and white.
How big is the wall?
I ended up getting a black king size bed sheet, flat sheet.
Oh, that's pretty big.
Yeah, so it's like 105 on 35, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be the size of.
So 8 by 10,
Whatever you wanna do.
whatever size.
You know, have you got a painting of God?
Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
I was gonna say. Is this what you're gonna hang?
I'm gonna hang these 3. I've got several others, so I just thought I'd give the pictures of the rodeo. Yeah, the background, it's just pretty safe. It just pops into the front. Yep.
Tim.
All right, well, I have. this picture ready, but it is still on the floor of my office downtown because I was trying to get out of town and back up here and I didn't make it. Actually, the one I have downtown is a little bit better edited, but this is what I had access to. So
I like the angle.
yeah, I wanted to get, if you sit right in front of it, you kind of lose some of the, it blocks some of the stadium, and I just wanted to get that. I was waiting for the lights to come on, but it started raining on me, so I got part of the lights on. So we got. That's actually a really old, if I did that 10 years ago or so. Good. Next one of these you've seen before. Okay, that's Juno Beach, Florida, on the way down to the pier one morning. I was actually there for a work trip and we didn't start till like 9, so I got up and went out there before I ate breakfast. And also printed it and sitting on the floor down there.
Where's that again?
Juno Beach, Florida.
Where's that close?
Where are you flying to? So it's pretty far south.
Gulf Coast or
Oceanside.
Oceanside?
That one I have printed. I'm going to print bigger. But that's from South Dakota. You guys have seen it before, I think. We're gonna print it bigger. This was just one I had that I printed kind of as a test on some metallic paper. I'm not completely sold on the paper. We'll figure it out and go a little bit bigger.
My next.
I think I have one more because I looked at the list and Chris put it forward.
Oh, yeah, one more.
This is another one I haven't printed yet, but it's gonna get printed. This is from K Park Swim this year. It's my daughter doing breaststroke, which is her
Watch the.
stroke of choice. I'm gonna print that. I'm printing a bunch for like kind of a collage at work. I have some real big ones and I'm gonna print a bunch of smaller ones, but I do the photographs for the team now for their.
That's pretty.
And so I get pictures like that with most of the kids. It was a lot of fun. Got to go to state. She made state before.
All right, that's the
I
last
got to
one.
be on deck and go to the states.
I didn't get yours
Good stuff.
here, but you can go ahead and show.
I've got 2, and there's a story behind both of them. This was taken before I knew what I was doing with photography. It was 32 years ago. I'm on a backpacking trip in the Absaroka Beartooth Wilderness. It'd been snowing on us for 3 days, and I had with me an Olympus film camera that had a built-in 35 to 135 lens. I'm walking down the trail and I turned and looked up this creek, and all I did was turn with one hand and take the picture. And it ended up on the cover of the Citgo annual report. And we came out of the snow early, and I got that shot of Lower Yellowstone Falls. But notice no snow in Yellowstone. We spent a week 200 feet above the snow line. That's how stupid we were. Then the other thing is, my dad, the Scapins homestead is outside of Glendive, Montana. And in Montana, when a car breaks down and they wear it out, they'll take the tractor and they'll haul it out into a pasture or the edge of a pasture and leave it. And the old Scapins homestead has this car. And if anybody gets the car, I'll give them an attaboy.
A Model A?
No, it's a Whippet. It's a Whippet. It's about what, a 1915 or 1918. And every time I go up there, I go out there and take pictures of it. But there's a lot of worn out cars up there.
Some blue bonnets around it.
You notice the scan, it's in the middle of some bad lands. Steve understands.
Anybody else have pictures?
Emily has some.
They're over there.
Okay. We've got about 10 minutes left.
Okay.
So,
Why don't we do this one first?
This one I've always
This
liked.
is one of my favorite places at the end of Woodland Hills. River Grove Park, just before Harvey. And it would have been a semi-interesting picture, and then this cyclist came and rested his bike there, and I moved, so he was back here, but I didn't want him in the picture. I wanted just like a promise of a bike ride. So anyway, that was it.
Nice, very nice.
And then another one, also before Harvey, same place, at sunrise. The sun was just popping up over the trees and all the birds were coming out. There's one up here. To greet the morning. So,
That's East End Park.
huh?
Is it East End? No.
East End.
That, it's, no, this is River Grove
River Grove.
before Harvey. Now, this whole area has got sandbar about 8 feet above the water line. So thank you,
Tim
Harvey.
posted a picture, didn't you, the other day on Facebook?
Looking the other.
Very similar, yeah.
And then my sister lives across Puget Sound, from Seattle. And I was walking out the door and I saw this moonrise over Seattle. I was just flabbergasted. By the time I got my camera out, it was way too high, but I have an app that'll show you where the moon is below the horizon. So the next night I was ready for it. And,
Emily, were you sleepless in Seattle?
all the time.
maybe.
Anyway, that's it.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Well, I have the small photos too. One is, street photography is one of my favorite things to do. And this photo was taken, I was just in India walking down the street and I happened to look up and this young woman was sitting in her window studying. So I had to stop and talk to her. Of course, I was wondering what she was doing. Yeah, she was. And I was recently in Madagascar and lemur baby, tail lemur. And they were just, you can't find any cuter little animal. And keeping with the theme of today's photos, make sure to get it right, Wyatt, is a picture of 2 ghost pipefish.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. That's it.
So where was that? Indonesia, Philippines, or somewhere?
Philippines.
Philippines, okay.
Probably, yeah, because I go there often, I don't know.
Okay. I have 2 minutes with that. This, I mean, people would get around this, but what you can also do with your photos, create a calendar. Which is what I did. This was in Ireland. We were there with our one daughter and her family. And very famous St. Stephen's Church, I think, very old. I just rural with the water. Very Middle Ages looking. And, let's see. Nope. All right, this one. This is Hawaii. It's the famous beach that we love to go to, Kihaha, on the Big Island. And this was January. The waves were coming in. This little girl was playing tag with the waves, and I just got in the water. It was able to catch her going. It's really, really nice. Actually, I had it on ViewBug and it won a couple of awards. So I was very pleased with that. And you can never repeat. You can go back to the same beach, but it's never the same. Right. Very nice. All right, so we had our 50th wedding anniversary in 2019. And this was the last time the whole family got together. I had a friend there, who was a photographer in Destin. So she came down to the beach with, and ranges and took our picture. We took all kinds of pictures. But this one does hang in my bedroom, in our family room, so. So that is, but that is, I mean, you get these pictures and you have to get them out somehow, but I am amazed and just, awed by the professionalism of the pictures that I've seen tonight. You guys, you all deserve a round of applause.
Oh, so it's on metal. Those are
Did
just-
that come with the?
Did you frame this or did the lab do this for you?
No, I went to Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Bay.
I was using command strips on mine and one of them.
So this is the last slide. Now, the two other slides behind this are the share and learn for the year and the programs for the year. I'm not going to go over them, but I'm going to upload the agenda so that you can go back in and look at it and see what's coming up and see what a share and learn. For 2018, or April 18th, we have Animalscapes, Wildlife and Landscape. Share and learn for April 2023, all about Texas. We're all getting out and taking pictures of Texas, so that should be easy. This is a longhorn that we found this weekend. And then I just want to thank everyone who's come tonight. I'm just so bigger than I thought we would have. And, you know.
Is everybody like the hybrid
Yeah.
back in place?
Yeah, the only problem is people forgetting to turn their microphones on.
Well, there's a learning curve.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you all for coming and I hope you have a good rest of your evening.